In this video, let's talk about the really sad and emotional backstory of Hector from Coco. When we first see him in the film, he seems like this fun, goofy, and pretty laid-back skeleton who's just trying to cross over into the land of the living for the Day of the Dead celebration. At first glance, he looks like a pretty chill and harmless guy. But if you take a closer look at his story, you'll realize it's actually full of a lot of pain, betrayal, and heartbreak, all things he's hiding behind that big smile of his. Before Hector died, he wasn't just some ordinary musician. He was actually a really talented songwriter, someone who had a real gift for music. But here's the thing, Hector never cared about getting famous or making a lot of money. What mattered most to him was the love he poured into his music. Music was his way of showing affection, especially to the most important person in his life, his daughter Coco. At that point in his life, Hector wasn't well known or famous at all. He had a simple, humble life with his wife Imelda and their daughter. His music wasn't meant for big crowds or to make a name for himself. It was made to bring joy, laughter, and happy moments to his family. Everything he did was for them. So it's clear that he wasn't chasing fame or fortune. His real passion was music, but more than that, it was a way for him to express his love for his family. Every song he wrote was for Coco and Imelda. But then everything started to fall apart when another character came into the picture, Ernesto de la Cruz. Ernesto was Hector's best friend, but he had very different dreams and ambitions. He wanted to share their music with the entire world, to become famous and successful. Meanwhile, Hector was happy just performing for his family and never really wanted to be away from them for too long. Ernesto was driven, ambitious, and totally obsessed with fame, qualities Hector didn't share. Still, Ernesto didn't give up on convincing Hector to join him on a big music tour. He promised Hector that it would be just one tour, and that it would change their lives forever. Ernesto convinced Hector that if he went on this tour, they would come back rich, famous, and their family would never have to struggle again. That promise was enough to convince Hector. He agreed to go, not because he wanted to be famous, but because he wanted the best life possible for his family. But even though he left, he made a promise to himself that he would come back to Imelda and Coco, because they were his whole world. He said goodbye to his family, not realizing that this would end up being the last time he would ever see them again. After being away from his family for such a long time, Hector started to feel extremely homesick. He missed them so much that no matter how much he loved performing, the joy of playing music in front of crowds just couldn't make up for the deep emptiness he felt being apart from Coco and Imelda. One of the most famous songs in the movie, Remember Me, was actually written by Hector himself. He loved singing it as a lullaby to his daughter, a way to tell her that even though he was far away, he wanted her to know that he loved her very much. It's such a beautiful and heartfelt song. Hector missed the simple happy life he had with his family. But now, because he had to keep performing for the world and couldn't be with them, that life felt like something he could never get back. Eventually, the pain of being away became too much for him to handle. He decided he couldn't take it anymore and made up his mind to go home to his family. This was a huge turning point in his story. But there was a big problem. His so-called best friend, Ernesto de la Cruz, didn't want him to leave. The truth is, Ernesto wasn't nearly as talented as Hector was. He knew that without his talent and songs, he wouldn't be able to keep his own fame going. Without Hector, Ernesto's dreams of becoming famous would fall apart. He cared about fame way more than friendship or loyalty, so he did something terrible, something really unforgivable. When Hector decided to go back home, Ernesto poisoned him.
To our friendship, I would move heaven and earth for you, mi amigo. Salud!
He wanted to steal Hector's songs and take all the credit for them himself. Because of this horrible act, Hector never made it back to his family. His family, sadly, thought that he had abandoned them. This is basically the heart of the movie's story. After Hector didn't return, his family gave up on music altogether and became shoemakers instead. They believed that music was cursed and that it would only tear their family apart, just like what happened to Hector. Because of that, they made a rule that no one in the family was allowed to play musical instruments or do anything related to music. They thought that if anyone tried, it would be like Hector abandoning the family for fame, which as we know, just wasn't true. Hector was trying to come back, but he was murdered by the one person he trusted most. Hector's story is incredibly heartbreaking. In the land of the dead, he faced a fate even worse than death itself, the fear of being forgotten. According to the movie, the dead can continue to live on as long as the living remember them. As long as someone puts your photo on an ofrenda, which is an altar to honor the dead, or says your name, you keep existing in the land of the dead. You don't just disappear after you die. But with Hector, things were different. His family was slowly forgetting about him because they had no idea he had died. They just thought he left them behind for the sake of music. Even after Imelda died, she never forgave Hector because of this misunderstanding. The only one who still remembered him was Coco, his daughter, who was still alive but getting older. Her memory of him was starting to fade, and if she forgot him completely, Hector would suffer what's called the final death. This means he would vanish entirely from the land of the dead, disappearing forever. This really helps explain why when we first meet Hector, he seems so desperate and anxious. His entire existence in the land of the dead depends on having his photo placed on an ofrenda back in the living world. Without that photo, he risks disappearing forever, basically being erased completely. So you can imagine the pressure he feels to be remembered. Luckily, things eventually worked out for him. He found out the shocking truth about who was really responsible for what happened to him. The person he believed was his best friend, Ernesto de la Cruz. Ernesto's entire fame and success were built on lies and betrayal. He became one of the most beloved legends and superstars, but all of the songs he claimed as his own were actually written by Hector. While Ernesto thrived in the spotlight, Hector's memory was fading away. But in the end, justice was served. The truth finally came out.
Hector should be on our ofrenda. He's part of our family.
He left this family.
He tried to go home to you and Coco, but De La Cruz murdered him.
It's true, Imelda.
Hector's the real musician. You're just the guy who murdered him and stole his song.
Murdered? I am the one who's willing to do what it takes to seize my moment.
Because of this, the Rivera family learned the real story, that Hector never abandoned them, and that he was actually stolen away from them by Ernesto's treachery. Hector's daughter, Coco, who was old and fragile, still remembered her father deep down in her heart. When Miguel sang "Remember Me" to her, it unlocked her fading memories.
Papa was a musician. When I was a little girl, he and Mama would sing such beautiful songs.
This was how his memory was preserved and passed down to the new generations. After Coco passed away, she was finally reunited with Hector in the land of the dead, surrounded by the rest of their family. And for those of Hector family still living in the real world, they will always remember him and keep his story alive. That way, Hector will never truly disappear from the land of the dead. So, that's pretty much the whole story of Hector in the film. It's a story filled with heartbreak, but also a lot of beauty, about family, love, and the power of remembering those we care about.